It's time to turn down the noise and tune in to News You Can Use, the show that gives you a quick insight into the latest twists and turns in healthcare news, where every diagnosis comes with an order of side-splitting humor. Your hosts are Dr. Nick, a longtime host, innovator, and healthcare wizard who can prescribe a digital dose of innovation to cure even the most ailing operational inefficiencies. And Dr. Craig Joseph, the healthcare guru who can diagnose both patient and software glitches with equal precision, making sure hospitals run smoother than a well-oiled robot doc. So buckle up, because we're diving into the ER of excitement, the ICU of irrationality, and the waiting room of wacky wisdom. Now here's Dr. Nick and Dr. Craig.
Welcome to the month of November. I'm Dr. Nick.
And I'm Dr. Craig.
This week, we'll be dissecting the latest healthcare news, unraveling the twists and turns, and making sense of all of those debacles.
Just remember, life's a lot like a breaking news story. Unpredictable, often absurd, and occasionally leaves you wondering if it's all just a cosmic prank.
This month, we take a look at robots and Carepods.
And we dive into AI safety and privacy and Glaucomflecken.
First off this week, we've got to get into the election. Anyone surprised?
I think you're talking about my daughter's student council election.
Yes, exactly.
And,
that was it.
I had predicted she was going to do quite well. She did. And so thank you for bringing that up in front of all of our listeners. Oh no! Or was it a different election?
It was. Yeah, no, we had a big one here that I'm going to say the world was watching. Somebody said, "Hold my beer" somewhere. I think. Let's see what we can deliver on. I mean, clearly there are some people around in our country who go, yeah, that's what I thought would happen. That's expected. I'm not sure that I did, irrespective of my political beliefs, which, I'm not here to promote or push one way or the other. But I don't think that was the way I thought it was going to unfold. And it was, I'm going to say, resounding on the sense of the Electoral College, which, there's a whole discussion around that, but not on the popular vote. I keep hearing that number continues to decline and may actually be less than 50%. So it's not quite the resounding mandate. But here's my thing, or the relevance to us is, what's that going to do for the next 4 years for healthcare and in particular the regulatory environment? We've seen a number of nominations. I have to say I'm just a teensy-weensy bit concerned with RFK Jr., who thinks that vaccines are a myth. And although he says he won't ban them, I'm not convinced, and has a number of other beliefs. And most recently, Dr. Oz, who over 50% of the content that he pushes out in his TV show, which I've never watched, but somebody analyzed, has no supporting evidence whatsoever for CMS of all things. I didn't know he was an expert in that space. Craig?
It's these are folks that are nominated to the position, and they have to be theoretically they have to be approved by the Senate.
Carefully inserts the word theoretically.
Well, there's a way around that, but
so I've heard.
Yeah, I think it's as a pediatrician, I generally tell people I haven't encountered too many vaccines that I'm not a fan of. There are whole diseases that 50 years ago or 70 years ago were devastating to society and to anyone that was alive then that I've never seen because of the power and the safety of vaccines. Yeah. With respect to RFK Jr., certainly no expert. I'm no expert on all of his positions. I know that some of the things he says make sense.
Absolutely.
So I will say that, some food, talking about food additives and coloring and talking about ultra processed foods not being good for us. Hey, there's science to support that. I think that's a good thing to talk about. Other politicians have tried talking about that, mostly unsuccessfully. I think that's great. However, there's a lot of other things that he says, and you mentioned kind of the vaccines and therapies for COVID that have absolutely no basis in science. Those are very concerning to me, and that
Yes.
someone would be a head of Health and Human Services would believe those. Whether he pushes them on, from policy or pushes them on us is another question. But yeah, so it's kind of a give and take. Dr. Oz, clearly an accomplished cardiothoracic surgeon, but also someone who, when he got his TV show, kind of changed a lot, apparently, from people who knew him. And I don't know what interest he has in the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, or
I do wonder. Do you think somebody called him up and say, "Hey, do you want this role, or here are the roles? What would you?" I don't know how any of that works, because I'm never going to be in that circle.
Yeah, they don't call us for some reason, Dr. Nick.
No, not as yet. At least I haven't had. I mean, well, maybe it went to spam. That's always a possibility.
You could have been the head of CMS if you would have just checked your spam folder.
Yeah, I got to say, that's not at the top of my list for sure. Anyway, I think it's going to be an interesting ride. It's probably going to be a little bit bumpy. I've heard some interesting positives. This is the time to sort of shake things up, to really try things out. I'm not saying this is necessarily a good thing, but potentially with the decrease in regulatory oversight, there's more opportunity to try things that you go, well, let's see. And ultimately, there will be a judgment day, no question, subsequently, because if you unload solutions that do harm, you will be held accountable. So I think, the onus is on us, the individuals within the profession, and, those people putting it out, who I think start with good intentions. Most, if not all, well, maybe not all, but most people start with good intentions. And I think they just go off the rails somehow. It's a small change initially, but
that's a really great point. I want to emphasize the idea that sometimes, even out of bad things, and I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing, right, but let's talk about something that was a bad thing, COVID. Hey, we have telehealth now, and we barely had that before COVID. And It wasn't because we didn't know how to do it. It was because no one would pay for it. And now it's paid for, and it's really revolutionized the way healthcare is presented in the U.S. I take advantage of it. I can't even think about it going away. And so I think the idea that, hey, even if it's a rough ride, there might be some good things that come out of it. We just need to make sure that very bad things don't come out of it as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. I often talked about the COVID challenge. I always talked about the silver lining, but qualified that by saying, I feel I struggle with saying that, because it brought so much unwelcome results, things that happened to many, many people. I did see people talking about the work back to the office push by a couple of folks who talked about COVID era privilege, which I found that
that's an interesting statement. Yeah,
a little bit taxing to my neurons. But anyway, moving on, let's move to AI. I've had the fortune of going to a couple of AI conferences, one focused on safety specifically. And I think, the general consensus there was, given the lack of regulatory oversight in part, I think the onus is on us. We have to bring more to the table. There is plenty of opportunity, but plenty of opportunity for missteps, challenges, safety issues. I think we continue to see options of that. There's lots of push for it. I think I saw somebody, on Twitter, previously called Twitter, whatever, there was a request for posting of medical records, which you apparently are happy to do, is my understanding.
Yeah, it was Elon that asked for the posting of. I think he was asking.
Did get the call?
Yeah. Well, he called. I don't want to get into my relationship with Elon, but I had mentioned that I have posted, not to Twitter or X, but I have uploaded a report of a radiologist's interpretation of an MRI of my back. And I uploaded it OpenAI, to ChatGPT, because I wanted to see how ChatGPT would interpret the radiologist's interpretation. And so I didn't give them images. I just gave them the report and said, "What does
you were
this
loading
mean?"
the images because
I don't know. Those are kind of difficult to get. And
no, they're not. They're DICOM standard. I get my CD or DVD, whatever it is these days.
Oh, sure, you could do that. Yeah,
but I don't think it takes them, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure it's a good idea to upload your personal medical information.
Well, no, I can tell you it isn't. Let me tell you. So years ago, I'm in the office in Pete Marwick's offices. I was a consultant. I was also a physician. And I think people were, somewhat bemused. This was many, many years ago. And somebody came back from an overseas trip and had been injured in the ocean, and he brought back his x-rays and he brought them into the office. It was a deliberate test of, is he really a doctor? And a crowd gathered as they pulled out this abdominal x-ray from this individual. And, apparently he'd suffered some back injury and sore back, and they wanted my clinical opinion. It was clearly a test. So I hold it up to the window light. I'm looking carefully, and I turned to him and I said, you look pretty constipated. He was not amused at all. No. But I said, well, hey, that's what I can see on this.
Yeah. All right.
So it's not.
So it's not a good idea just to walk around.
Do not put your clinical records. At least that's my perception of this. I think you have to consider that PHI, and it's attributable and has some potential of causing future challenges if you're revealing all. I think I've always said, you can have my information if you don't use it against me. I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah. Well, and you lose control of it once it goes out there. So yeah, I was fine with uploading a report that didn't have my name on it. So it was kind of hard to get it back to me. And it was just a gobbledygook of big words that I didn't understand about the things I formerly called bones in my back.
What was it? 136? Oh no, that's the total. Yeah, in the back. Oh, I don't know.
It's a mess. But yeah. So, what did you learn about safety in AI? Are we good or are we not good?
No, I think the onus is on us. I mean, I think there is a real challenge. It's a little bit of the Wild West, and as we referenced earlier, there is this potential challenge of rollout without proper testing. It can be difficult to actually apply appropriate testing to anything that is released on the population. And as a result of that, we have to be cautious and question the results. And, there was even a very deep dive of, how do you check the checkers, and, can you use AI to check the output? And, we get into this very meta discussion of, where does it end up? But I think the onus is on us. The highlight for me, and, this was at the safety conference, was Dr. Glaucomflecken. I'm sorry, I just struggle with this. That's why I gave you the intro to that.
It's Glaucomflecken.
Glaucomflecken.
But that is, I believe that is not his real name.
No. Will Flannery is his real name. Glaucomflecken sounds like glockenspiel to me. But anyway, that's a clinical. Is it a sign or I can't remember. But
I think it's a thing. It's a thing in your eye.
Isn't it something you find? Yeah. So
it's something that an ophthalmologist maybe makes up. I'm not sure if it's real, but they talk about it.
Yeah. No. Well, so he presented. He's obviously the comedian of note in the healthcare space. I'm going to say outstanding, both online and especially in person. But I bring him up because, I nod to him in terms of his ultimate message. I mean, he's got lots, and, he's really taking on the healthcare challenges that we all face. But his approach to this, and I think it's one that's worthy of sharing, is we need to educate everybody so that they understand the principles of what is going on around them. And specifically, in his instance, he had all the challenges. He's had some significant medical challenges. He's in a pretty rare group based on some of the conditions that he's shared publicly. But it was the subsequent series or never-ending series of denials, bills, ambulance bills. You didn't go in network, out of network. And, he's approached this with a sort of, whoa, I didn't really fully understand, perhaps, because I'm not on that side of the coin. And now he's trying to educate the population. And his plea was, that's what we healthcare professionals and everybody in the space that does understand should be trying to do, is to communicate this effectively. So hopefully we do that with just the odd tinge of humor here or there.
Yeah, the humor is what allows, I think, him to get the message out effectively.
It does.
Right?
It does.
Yeah. And the other thing is he's not really speaking. He's a physician. He's an ophthalmologist, but he's really speaking about his experiences as a patient and as a consumer, as someone who, and I think he's talked about it before. His insurance company didn't want to pay for his ambulance to the hospital after his heart had stopped beating and his wife had done CPR on him for 20 minutes.
She couldn't even open the door, to be clear, because she was
doing CPR, and the police had to break into her house to let the paramedics in because her two small children were sleeping. So, so he's had these horrific experiences that we would not wish on our greatest enemy, and he's hilarious, and so he can kind of present all of that. He's got some awesome abilities, and I'm sorry, I've never seen him in person. I've watched his YouTube videos. They're amazing.
He's even better than the real thing. I can't say enough positive things. Fantastic individual, great message, and I try and use him as a guiding star. I wish I was as funny as him, but I'll keep working at it. So, all right, moving on. Carepods. Did you see the news about Carepods?
I did see the news about Carepods, and we should talk about what. So the company behind Carepods went bankrupt.
It did,
with like no notice, like a day's notice, you're done. What is a Carepod? How do we describe what a Carepod is? What does this company do?
I'm going to say it's a virtual setup of consultation. It's like a pod enclosed, a fully enclosed space that is designed for clinical consultations that can be done by a variety of folks who may not physically be there. So a sort of remote access type of availability. So to your point of telehealth, we didn't have it. Hey, we've suddenly got it. Now there's more of it. Yet there they were failing. And surprised, were you? Sounded like an odor there. Surprised, were you?
It was kind of out there. So people had to pay. It was like a subscription service. So you paid X hundreds of dollars a month. I don't think they dealt with insurance or any other third party. And if you were a member, you had access to these pods that imagine you go to an old shopping mall, or that's where these things were.
Those empty
spaces. And I think there might have been like a medical assistant or someone with kind of minimal clinical training who could maybe draw some blood or, collect a urine specimen, do something like that. But
even
generally
test the blood locally, I think, possibly. Yeah.
So I get it, but there's a small clientele that's going to be willing to pay hundreds of dollars a month in case they needed some services. And these are generally just primary care type things. So you're not going to go there if you're worried that you have a brain tumor. So it's really kind of just bread and butter medicine. And it's often cheaper, faster, easier still today to get care either from a brick and mortar urgent care, or if you have a PCP to go to your PCP. So it might have been that they were ahead of their time, or it might have been that they need the rest of kind of society to change a little bit so that the money makes sense. I wouldn't pay that much money for access to the.
I'm gonna say I'm on a different track there for us to. And here's partly why this was HealthSpot all over again, and I was involved in that. I'm going to say at least 10 years ago. Similar, fantastic units, but limited by whatever the technology was. But there was all this innovation that allowed you to examine the ear. There was a remote stethoscope. It was really well designed, and the best part of it was a full facility where you could put your kids in the back with you. So there was space, and it was the way it was designed. You felt like you were in a cloudless, a room with no sky. It was so beautifully designed. Completely failed for a variety of reasons, but they had local on-site testing. I'm going to point the finger of blame because I've got a bee in my bonnet on this subscription service stuff. That, to me, why am I going to subscribe? It's so disingenuous to ask me to pay on a regular basis for something that I might use actually never if I'm fit and healthy. I mean, I think there's better models for this. And, the concept to me is just telehealth that's improved and could be, better than the real version, or not the real version, the version that's, through a Zoom equivalent call where you've got limited access. But it just stop with this subscription service, please.
Well, I think that's how they have to get. If you don't, I'm just guessing. I have no insights here for this real world.
To be clear, that's mostly what we do, but okay.
Yeah, to be clear, mostly I have no insights, actually.
No, I'm not you. I'm going to fess up to that.
Let's just go there. I think that it doesn't, I think financially they can't do it if they don't have regular income. And if you're only going to be charged when you use it, to your point, I may never use it for a year or two, then it's going to be, $2,000 for your visit, which then we know you're not going to do that.
Yeah, no, I'd
if you want to pay $2,000 for a sore throat, you might as well go to the emergency room, and where you can actually pay $2,000 for a sore throat.
Yeah, no, and the rest, I'm just going to say, based on one nonsense. Oh, and by the way, I got the $4,000 bill. This was two plus years later. There seems no statute of limitations for some of these things. Anyway, let's close. Really intriguing. I think I shared with you. You've seen the video. The automated robot that learns to tie knots using essentially laparoscopic type tools, or it could be in the flesh. I've seen some of these before. So I have some videos that I've used in the past that I actually put into presentations where it felt a little bit like a sewing machine, but this was just extraordinary. And they even tried to interfere and put things in the way. And I'm going, wow. And can you tie a knot with one hand? Oh, no, you're a pediatrician. That's right. No.
Yeah, no, that's a no. That's fine. You try to shame me, but it's not going to work, Dr. Nick. No, I don't do any of that stuff. But that's okay. It was amazing to me that a robot can learn how to tie these knots or use make precise cuts. But what's more amazing is that no one programmed it.
That's it.
They showed it videos.
Exactly.
They showed the AI videos.
Now do it.
Yeah. And it translated, they said, the article kind of explained it's kind of like ChatGPT uses words and reads words and understands what words go together. This is a similar version, but instead talks about motions of what you're going to move and how you're going to move it, and kind of breaks it down and puts it back together in unique ways. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've said elsewhere, but I think, this technology, and I use it in the broader sense, AI, to encapsulate all of that. So machine learning, deep learning, all of those has not even started to ascend the peak of inflated expectations on that graph. I think we're only touching what's going to come, which, back to our earlier discussion, is going to make for some really interesting potential outcomes, solutions that might emerge as a result of taking all the brakes off and, seeing where we go. But I'm just going to say, exciting time. I'm looking forward to it. Unfortunately, we find ourselves at the end of another episode exploring healthcare's mysteries before they become your emergencies. Until next time, I'm Dr. Nick.
And I'm Dr. Craig.